You tell him, King Leo, you silly boy.
So most fantasy anime, they're kind of more so focused on action, the fantasy aspects like magic, sorcery, like fancy creatures like dragons, goblins, different stuff like that. But an anime that I've been watching recently, and I haven't finished yet, but I want to kind of talk about everything that I've seen about it so far, is Delicious in a Dungeon. So Delicious in Dungeon is basically kind of a Dungeons and Dragons meet Food Wars, where we follow Senshi, Marcel, Chilchuck, and Leos. They are trapped in a dungeon because they're all kind of, I think they're dungeon, they call them dungeon hunters or something like that, but they're all in a dungeon, and they run out of food because Laos's party before they lost to the Red Dragon, so he got sent back to the beginning, and his sister got eaten by the dragon. And so he has to go back in and to try to make it back to the floor where the dragon was. And he parties up with Marcel, Senshi, and Chilchuck. And so as we follow them, they run out of food and they have to figure out what to eat. And so then they come up with the idea to eat the monsters. Because Senshi has done this before, surprisingly, because he's been around before, so he's eaten and cooked the monsters before. So they try it out, and it works out actually really well. And that's kind of the whole premise of where we're at with the show. Because before watching it, I kind of didn't know what it really was. I kind of didn't really. It didn't really look interesting to me. But until, well, first my brother, he was watching it, and it kind of piqued my interest because I really like to cook and I really like food. And I enjoyed Food Wars, but Food Wars it's not that fantasy aspect to it. Food Wars is more of like a modern kind of anime. But me and my anime club, we started watching it. And then I started to get more interest into it from watching it with them. But it's just kind of more so the things I find interesting about it is how in a lot of anime, hunger is there because, a lot of shonen tropes have the main characters eating food. It has them like Dragon Ball, Naruto, One Piece. All those shows do it a lot. Black Clover, just a lot of different animes. They do it a lot with like characters eating massive amounts of food like really fast and like they never like stop eating. They're always hungry. But with Delicious in Dungeon, they use hunger more so than a trope or more so than a theme. Hunger is kind of a part of the plot. Like the characters are hungry, and if they don't kill a monster and cook it, then they don't eat. So then they starve. If they don't find a monster that they can eat, then they starve. So hunger kind of becomes a plot point. Like it kind of becomes something that drives the story forward, is because when the characters are hungry, then they have to find a monster that they can eat, because a lot of the monsters you can't eat, there's specific ones that you have to kill to eat, and there's some that you can't eat at all. So it's kind of like you have to know which ones to kill and which ones you can eat. And that gets me into this other topic about, and we'll come back to this hunger topic later, but that pulls me into this other topic about the characters. Because with Leos, he's the party leader, but he's also like a warrior, like a knight. But he has very fond knowledge of monsters. Ever since he was younger, he's always been interested in monsters. And he knows the monsters like inside and out, like his own body. He knows the anatomy. He knows exactly where to hit them to kill them and all of that. And he's very fascinated about them because because if I remember from watching it, he was really one of the main ones fascinated in being able to eat the monsters, like knowing that, oh, so we're eating monsters now. So like he was really fascinated in eating the monsters. Um, and then you got Senshi. He's more so, especially from the beginning, he's kind of like a mysterious character. Kind of like we don't really know too much about him, but like we know that, like I said before, that he's been around because as we see, he knows a lot about the dungeon and he's been there before, but we can kind of piece together like a couple theories, but nothing really that sticks that we know for sure that he's been here. But I haven't watched I have to finish the series, but from where I am now, we still don't really like we've gotten pieces of Senshi's story, but we haven't really gotten the full grasp of it. And then for Chilchuck, he is the trap diffuser guy. He works like with the mimic chest and like all the traps within the dungeon. And he's kind of also he's one of the more reluctant ones about eating the monsters. Like he's more the one of the ones that's more so against it, like Marcel, which would be the next one we get into. He's more reluctant about the monsters because it's something new to him and it's something that he hasn't done before. So he doesn't really like mess with it at first, and then we'll get into that as well. But then Marcella she's one of the ones that's completely against it with the monsters. She doesn't want to eat them at all. She's wondering why they don't have any like other types of food. And that was one of the funny parts to me because going back to the hunger thing, or I said the hunger is more of just a theme or a trope in this show, hunger is kind of a way that they also develop the characters and bring the characters together because after eating certain monsters, or actually after eating the first monster they ate, Marcel and Chilchuck, they started to come around. Even though they were weary about every time they were getting ready to eat a monster, they were weary about it. They started to come around, and their characters started to develop more to being more trusting and more and a little less against not wanting to eat the monsters. It got more towards them being okay with eating the monsters because they found out that the monsters were delicious, and then they started to become more trusting of like Leos, Senshi, and each other because before they weren't all gonna be in the same party, but they kind of just ended up forming into the party together. And from the food, they started to build that bond and it started to build that trust. That in most anime, you kind of get that trust and you get that bond from maybe like fighting together or maybe just from like a strong friendship. You don't really get it from food because in most animes, like food is just not, it's just more of like a placeholder, if that makes sense. It's more just there. Like it's more just in the background. But in Delicious a Dungeon, they actually use food is the whole plot. Hunger is the whole plot. Because if, like I said before, if they don't kill a monster, then they don't eat. If they don't eat, then that means they die. And if they die, then the whole other plot of finding Fallon, Leos' sister, is done. And so food is kind of the whole plot point of the show. Even though finding Fallon is also a piece of the plot, food kind of makes its way into the plot as well because of how important the show puts emphasis on food rather than like other anime where food is usually just in the background or it's not really there. Because, like I said about hunger being more than just a plot, food is also more so just in the plot. But something else that interests me is more so how this show stood out rather than like other modern shows that have been coming out recently. Because, like I said, Delicious in Dungeon, it flew under my radar until I actually sat down and watched it for myself. And I got to see like why it stood out. Because before, I don't know why it flew up under my radar so much, and even watching it, I was surprised that I didn't pick it up sooner because it's actually a very interesting show. And one of the main reasons why I think that it stands out upon modern shows is because, like I said before, of how different it is, and from different tropes that we've seen before, Delicious in a Dungeon kind of flips those tropes on its head. So for like food just being like a placeholder or a background kind of item, it's used as a plot point in this anime. And I think that's what draws people to it. Cause it's kind of, like I said, it's a food wars mixed with a Dungeons and Dragons kind of theme, aesthetic kind of thing. because Food Wars was an anime that did that. The whole plot was literally centered around food. Like that's something that we don't really see too much in anime, because even in Delicious in Dungeon, the food looks way better than the fights. Like them cooking the food, that's basically our fight scene for Delicious in Dungeon. Like how, for example, in Bleach or Dragon Ball, how we're looking forward for Goku to do the Spirit Bomb, or for Ichigo to use his ultimate move. Sorry, I haven't really finished Bleach. But or for like Black Clover waiting on Asta to get that new transformation. I don't want to spoil it for anybody that hasn't seen it. Or for example, like Dragon Ball, we're waiting on Goku to complete Ultra Instinct. That's the same thing for Delicious in Dungeon. We're waiting to see what they're gonna make with this. Like when they got to the dragon, we were waiting to see what they were gonna cook with the dragon. Or when they kill the plants, we were trying to see what they were going to make with the plants, or like with the coins. Like that's what I'm saying. Like with every monster that they do kill, the fight scenes are kind of like sometimes they end quickly or sometimes they're not as flashy, but the cooking scenes that's peak animation. The animation for the cooking scenes are crazy. As much as we wait and yearn for the fight scenes from like Dragon Ball, Demon Slayer, My Hero, and all those other cool shows, that's how much we yearn for the cooking scenes in Delicious in Dungeon. Because the cooking scenes, that's where all the animation literally goes. Like that's where all the hard work goes, because that's how much emphasis that anime puts on food. Because like I said before, food is more than just a placeholder in that show, or it's more than just place in that show. It's literally a whole plot point. Just like in Food Wars, it's a whole plot point. And that's why I think that it stands out among other shows, is because we don't get many anime that's like that. Like where food is the centerpiece. Because I know like in some studio Ghibli films, the food looks stunning. In most anime, the food looks stunning, but it's not praised or it's not worshipped as much as it is in like Food Wars or Delicious in Dungeon. Like we don't get that difference enough for these shows not to stand out. So when we do get it, it's something new and it makes it stand out a lot more, because it's something that we don't get a lot of. But we get a lot of action. We get too much action. So that's what I think that makes Delicious in Dungeon stand out a lot more. And personally, like I said, for me, I really enjoy food and I like cooking and stuff like that. So that could have also been another reason why it stood out to me more, and why I say I don't understand why it flew under my radar for so long. Because if you ask me, I actually think it's a really great show. It's a phenomenal show. And I still do need to finish it. And I probably will end up making another episode after I end up finishing it. Because I think I left off on the part where we see Fallon is the Chimera. Because they've already defeated the dragon. And we see where Fallon, she turns into the Chimera. Fallon's the Chimera. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I know we're going into the new year. So I want to try to get like more people. I know I've gotten like a couple of friends and family on the podcast, but I want to try to get more people on here, because I do enjoy doing it solo, but I want to try to get like more guests on here so we can get like more point of views from what other people think about some anime and some shows like that. And I'm also kind of wanting to lean into some newer kind of content as well, with still doing the podcast, but also doing like some vlogs, or maybe some gaming content, other things like that. So if that's some things that you guys might be interested in, just let me know. Drop it down in the comments. But as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day or night. And as always, join the den. See you later.